Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. So many hikers, trekkers and adventurers out there have had their trips cancelled over the last week or so, which absolutely sucks. And I've personally talked to a number of hikers over the last few days who are really feeling the crunch there and they're really feeling at rock bottom. And whether you've been planning these adventures for months or for years, either way, I know it can really get you down and it can really, really make things tough in amongst all this other craziness. And on top of this, with all the craziness in the world right now, that thought of actually any type of adventure is just getting slimmer and slimmer, which is a real shame. Because as hikers, we really do love that adventurous spirit. We know and we appreciate how important it is for our lives, for both our physical and our mental health. And even amidst all this uncertainty, stress and fear right now, for me personally, I don't want that feeling of adventure to disappear altogether. Because I know how much it means to my life, and I know once it is gone, it is really, really hard to rekindle and to get that momentum back. So with that being said, if you have had your trip cancelled, or you are in doubt of being able to get out on a serious adventure anytime soon, here are some steps which can keep you positive during this time. So step number 1 is reschedule. Now, there might not seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel right now, but this crisis will not go on forever. And you can still complete that adventure you've been dreaming about at some stage. I would highly recommend you reschedule your trip for 6, 8 or 12 months in the future or whatever seems appropriate. This is super important for 2 reasons. Number 1 is if you fall into that wait and see mentality, then more than likely it's just never going to happen. Because remember how hard it was to finally book this trip in the first place, how long you put it off for, how much time you and ahhing about it. And the more than likely, if you get in this position where you're just waiting and see, this trip is just going to get shelved for a long time. So just don't let that happen. Rebook it right now. And if further down the line you need to rebook again, you can deal with that when it comes. But just have that in your future and have it somewhere. And number 2, small businesses are going to get hit super hard at this time. And trekking companies and tourism in general are just getting hammered. So if you're in a financial position to rebook and you haven't had some massive financial hardship at the moment, if you can rebook as opposed to cancel your adventure, it genuinely could be the difference between your companies that are surviving this time and potentially falling out of business. So I highly, highly recommend you to rebook. And I honestly believe if you do have something in the future to aim for, have that light somewhere at the end of the tunnel, it really can shift your mindset. It can give you something positive to dream about in amongst all this time. And I firmly believe it is so important for your mental health as well. And I think that one significant step can make a really big difference. So step number 2 is find a local trip. So maybe potentially you've been training for months and months for this adventure and you're feeling really ready for anything. And I know a lot of my clients are in this exact same situation. They put their head down, they've been doing all the right things in their training, they're probably feeling at the fittest they've ever felt in years and years and years and years, but they just don't have the time to test it on the trail or the opportunity to test it on the trail. And then maybe you've even taken the time off work and you've taken that leave and you just need something to do. Or maybe you've invested a stupid amount of money in a new gear. I know a lot of people have done that. Whatever it is, don't let it go completely to waste. If you're not currently restricted from this in your local area, so if you're not on home isolation or you don't have travel bans or you're not recommended, your national parks aren't closed or whatever, find a local trip in your home state or your home country, whatever is appropriate for you at this time. Maybe it's with a small group with a tour operator who might still be running, or maybe it's just with you and a friend. But get out there and do it. It might not be that grand adventure you've been dreaming about, but more than likely it is still going to be amazing. And if you're not recommended to travel at this time, maybe you're stuck at home, or maybe you're just not supposed to be out in the national parks, absolutely comply with this. But there will find a local trip in this time when you can travel. So when things do calm down, and when you can get outside and get into nature again, whether it's a couple of weeks or a month or two, who really knows, but find somewhere that you want to go and then make it happen when you can. So in this short-term goal that you have something to aim for, you can make this happen in the short term and get yourself through. So finding a local trip, I think, can be a really powerful thing for many, many people. And then the third step here is keep on training. So if you're listening to this podcast, I assume you've been training, or you've been thinking about training for quite a while. And if you've had to push your trip back, whether it's for a few months, whether it's for half a year, whether it's for an entire year, just try to avoid that temptation to drop your training altogether. You might be disheartened. You might be demotivated. You might be upset. You might have a million things going on in your life right now. But just think about this. You've worked so hard to get yourself in this position. If you do absolutely nothing, you're more than likely just going to go back to square one, and you're going to have to start again. But if you can maintain a tiny bit of training during this time, it will help you maintain this strength and maintain this fitness and maintain that resiliency which you've been building over all these months. So do what you can in this time. Get the home workouts going, keep yourself moving, get out on the trail if that's appropriate. Not only will this help maintain your hard-earned fitness, but again, it's going to do wonders for your mental health, your stress, and just your feeling of well-being during this time. If you've had your adventure cancelled, it really, really does suck. But this does not mean you have to give up on your dream. Follow these steps, keep that adventurous spirit alive, and let's get through this the best way that we can. So I really hope you've enjoyed this episode today, guys. I really think it probably will be speaking to quite a few people listening to this podcast who are in this exact situation. Now, one thing I would really ask of you at this time, from me to the listeners, small businesses are really getting hit hard. And I'm not too proud to say that my business, Summer Strength, is in that situation right now. So one small thing that I would ask of you, if you are listening and you have not done this already, please, it would mean the world to me if you can leave me a review for this podcast on whatever platform you're listening. It might seem relatively small and insignificant on your end, but believe me, every single review for this podcast makes a massive difference to helping me grow this podcast and helping support my small business weather this time. So if you could take a minute or two to do this and take it out of your day to support this podcast and support my business, I would sincerely, sincerely appreciate it. So I'll leave it on that, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye.